Okay, that is happening.
This won't actually start for a couple minutes.
We're live now.
We are?
Yeah, there's streaming things happening. I just got the YouTube notification on my phone. There is a stream live on my other monitor. I can see it. Welcome to the thing.
If anyone's even here.
Right. We should make it clear in case someone is watching the recording of this, which will be archived, that we're not starting for a few minutes. You can probably skip ahead.
By the way, I'm going to repost it too.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Repost.
The audio sounded good? Cool.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Good.
I can keep an eye on the chat.
Hello. We got a viewer, guys.
Alright.
I don't know who it is, but hi.
Dude, this is a lot different from your stream, Jake, because this guy actually has subs.
Alright, fuck you. Oh, I didn't ask. Are we allowed to swear?
Yes.
Cool.
Why the fuck wouldn't we?
I don't know. Some people are dumb.
Well, I'm younger than you guys and I still curse, so.
Yeah, I fucking know that. I just...
Can't talk about the ITS without saying big fucking nothing.
If you guys want to, like, go around and introduce ourselves, we'll probably do it again later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll go first. So, whoever's here, yeah, I'm SNN. I'm Space News Network. Or SpaceX Fan on iPhone.
Yeah.
And we got Space and Robots actually hosting a stream because, you know,
Howdy.
I don't know what I'm doing. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. That's me. I'm Space and Robots, and yeah. Continue.
And I'm for Aspera at Astra. I also don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Thomas?
And I'm Max Airspace.
Yeah. So yeah, welcome to the stream. We're gonna get started in just a few minutes once again, and we'll delve into our first topic, which is ITS speculation, as it says.
Yep. I just put the post on iPhone, so.
Yeah. We'll go full start in like 3 minutes.
Yep.
Well, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Oh, we just say shit.
True.
Thomas, should we flash our credentials yet?
We have credentials.
I mean, more than the other two.
What?
Yeah, once the stream starts, let's formally introduce ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And if any questions come up about ITS fans, we'll go to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woo.
Alright, I'll be back in a second. I'm going to grab my laptop, so I'll pull the stream up on there.
Copy.
Okay.
Cool. When he gets back, I think we'll start.
Yeah.
It's a 20 minutes out. realized the other day that I have family coming in next weekend, and so I'm more than likely not actually going to be watching the presentation live. I'm just going to be checking Twitter.
Hey, Carl.
Of course, Carl's here.
Yeah, he's always here within like 3 minutes. Every time I stream.
Wait, who's Carl?
Carl Sagan.
Oh.
The real one. His zombie literally... Yeah, some people are very quiet. Let me try to boost some audio levels here.
Am I still quiet?
Can you hear a little bit better now? Hopefully. Them, the other people. You can probably hear me pretty well.
Yeah, I'm kind of quiet.
The legend returns. I think that should be a little bit better on the audio for other people now. Thomas, say
Hopefully.
words.
Sorry, I muted for a second. Can you? How am I doing that?
Yeah, we can't hear. You guys gotta tell us.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad. I just boosted their audio levels. Alrighty.
Back it's 1 o'clock.
Yeah, we're good. I'm pulling it up now on my laptop.
Copy.
So did you guys say you wanted to do some introduction?
Yeah, let's
Oh,
do
I was kind of being sarcastic, but sure.
Well, don't all start at once, guys.
Well, fuck you. I'll start then. I'm Space and Robots, aka Jacob. I'm an aerospace engineering major, and I work as a machinist in the aerospace industry. I make a lot of parts for SpaceX. Can't really get into that on stream, though.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. Aerospace, also known as Thomas, aerospace engineering student at Texas A&M University. Yeah.
And I'm Paraspora ad Astra. And I'm really, really jealous of you two because you guys have jobs and I don't. But, I mean, that's okay.
I don't think he has a job. I think I might be the only one with a real job.
In the aerospace industry
Whatever.
is
You get what I mean.
ISS conference. That's about as close as I got.
Yeah.
And I'm SpaceX fan, also known as Space News Network, so...
Yeah.
And I gotta be at work in about 3 hours, so...
Rip.
So there's two of us with jobs. Alright. Shall we
Well,
dive
if you
right
can
in?
consider school work, then I've got work. But, I mean, yeah.
Let's talk about ITS.
Yeah.
So, I should probably start by saying I'm really skeptical of SpaceX's claims about this booster.
I'm skeptical about the 12-meter one, but, I mean, if Elon, he gave us a hint about, a 9-meter one, if it's smaller, yeah, I can see it, because, I mean, it would make sense to start smaller, so...
Yeah, no, I think even acknowledging that you have to do a step up and do a medium size, like a midline one, it's still a ridiculous thing. I'm gonna start by talking about the carbon fiber. The engine count is also high, Carl. I agree, but I'm gonna start by talking about carbon fiber, which I have quite a bit of experience with. It's really hard to make anything airtight out of carbon fiber. And when you ask to have something remain airtight, not just airtight, but under pressure at a range of temperatures in excess of 400 degrees, you're running into problems with material shrink and expansion that I don't know how SpaceX even remotely plans to tackle.
Yeah. They made that, ITS tank out of carbon fiber last year.
Right,
and
but
it kind of failed.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a simple problem. To do any of this rocket, you need to have completely new manufacturing technologies, which take years to develop. and you also need to then teach people how to use those manufacturing technologies, and that takes another couple years to be good at it.
Yeah. And just a question for everyone here: did anybody post in the prediction thread on the SpaceX Reddit page about what they think it might look like?
I did not.
I did. No. I have the thread up just to kind of reference.
Yeah, I got mine pulled up.
We're talking about that tank, and the one that they created last year was full scale or full diameter at least tank. And I think trying to manufacture one for a scaled down version, if you were going to go 9 meters or even smaller, I think if they were able to do that, then that would be a sort of positive sign, because they went straight from the full size tank.
Yeah, I want to jump in really quick. In the chat, Roman Smith said SpaceX holds many secrets, but actually that's very false. SpaceX, like Tesla, releases all of their technologies and they patent them but allow people to use them. So they don't actually hold any secrets.
I mean, they just don't make everything public right away.
I'm reasonably certain they make almost everything they have public.
Still never saw that Bulgaria sat footage.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
I think they're part of there might be stuff that they're just not releasing now just because they're going to talk about it next week. So there's no point waiting, or there's no point releasing it now, because then you have nothing to talk about on Friday.
Yeah.
But in general, I'm pretty sure they keep everything public.
I think they're probably going to be announcing a smaller size one, possibly using the aluminum lithium alloy instead of using the carbon fiber.
They could use that at first.
Yeah, like as a tech demonstrator,
continue testing and
integrate
it.
Yeah, I think it is going to be the smaller one will be built with the aluminum, and then a few years down the line they'll just slowly transition to carbon fiber.
Yeah, I agree.
Just like with Falcon 9, it was 1.1, 1.2, and stuff like that.
Yeah. The other thing that you could do is not an entirely carbon fiber design, but mostly. The thing that failed on Amos 6, if you remember, was a composite overwrap on the helium tank, right?
Yep.
That composite overwrap technology is actually very solid. It's just SpaceX had a goof in their loading procedure.
It's really a manufacturing error.
No, it wasn't. It was an error in the loading procedure where they cooled down the helium tank first, so then oxygen sublimated underneath the carbon fiber, made a gap, and then it ruptured. You could do a similar thing on your primary tank where you do. It's more than $1 million, Carl.
About $100 million there.
Yeah. You could do a similar thing on your primary tank structure, and assuming you did it correctly, it'd be a lot more robust. But basically, you do a very thin, like tinfoil thick sheet of aluminum on the inside of your tank, and then wrap that with carbon fiber. And as long as it's backed, the carbon fiber is what's actually holding the load, but it's made airtight by the aluminum foil. And so you get a similar thing. And so I think that's probably how I would attempt to build anything out of carbon fiber as an airtight structure. And they may be announcing that they're going to attempt that.
Yeah, I think when the first presentation at the ISE last year came out, that was, I think you can't really, yes, he presented a lot of numbers, he presented a lot of specifics as far as what they expected their performance to be, etc. But I think you have to take last year's presentation and look at it more as a concept and less of a design.
Yeah.
That you can kind of have to take the big picture. Okay, you're going to have a booster and you're going to have a spaceship. You're going to have in-orbit refueling. You're going to have Just basic, it's going to have a lot of engines. You might want to ignore the fact that he said 42. The end product might not have 42, but there'll be a lot, is the point. Things like that. And I think this year, now that they're most likely further along in development and they're working towards a vehicle that's going to come before full scale, I think you can actually hope, or at least expect, to get some more specific numbers as far as what they're actually building and what they're actually, planning. I think you might be able to get specific thrust numbers. You might be able to get more specific mass to orbit numbers. And start to take this year's presentation, and obviously we'll have a better idea once we see it, and based on the presentation goes, you'll have a better idea whether we're still in the concept phase or if they're more in the design phase. But I think hopefully this year we'll get the first design of an actual vehicle that they intend to manufacture.
I think you're definitely right. They're going to have more detail in this one, and you'll see something that's probably a lot closer to what it will end up being, because they've spent a year and they had a concept last year and CAD models, and it looked, from my perspective, like about a month of work for SpaceX. And if you come into something with a month of work versus 13 months of work, you're going to have a big difference, and you're going to have something that's more developed.
And I think they said they gave a number last year that I think it might have been 10%. That might even be high of SpaceX's workforce is going towards ITS development at the time of the presentation. I think it might have been less than that.
I thought I remember hearing there was only like 50 people on it or something.
Yeah, something.
It was really small.
Yeah.
And so now that, there's probably little to no workforce on Dragon 1 other than just processing people because they're not building those anymore.
Right.
You have
all the engineers from Dragon 1 at least have been pulled away.
Most of them have probably just moved to Dragon 2, but
yeah.
You have Block 5, which is nearing completion, and you have Falcon Heavy, which is pretty much ready to go. So I think a lot.
And you have all the propulsion guys who just got laid off from Dragon 2.
That's also true.
Yep.
So you have a probable increase in workforce that's now working on ITS. So not only is it they've had more time to work on it, they've had more people working on it during that time.
Exactly. I want to go to the chat for a second. We had a question about how much carbon fiber it takes in order to launch and make it through atmospheric pressure. It's a very ambiguously worded question because you don't give a unit, but I assume you mean like in weight or thickness, and it would not have to be very thick.
It would probably be thinner than the alloy they're using now, correct?
Right, it probably would. I would reckon no more than a 16th of an inch at the very most.
The whole point of using carbon fiber is to save weight, so...
Right. It doesn't necessarily have to save volume because you can go out like another 16th of an inch if you need to, because it is less dense. I think, a 16th of an inch should be able to hold a lot of pressure. I work around carbon fiber a lot at my job. And there's a company across the street, I can tell you this, they make guitars out of carbon fiber. And I've thrown one of their guitar necks, and it's not very thick, but it'll take a lot. So it's not going to need a lot of carbon fiber to be very strong, especially if you do balloon tanks like on the Atlas program, where they have to be under pressure to maintain their own weight.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, carbon fiber is light but very strong. That's its whole thing. And also it's quite stiff as well. So yeah, that was my tangent off into the chat. Going back, they're definitely going to have something more evolved at this presentation. They're going to have, I think, something that will be what they're actually working towards, whereas this last one was a concept that they can then base off of. This time we're going to see what they actually have.
Right. I think that should bring us to our next one. Like, personally, like, what do you guys think it'll look like? And, like, the size, and have you guys thought about that? Like, do you think it'll look the same, or how different do you think it's honestly going to be?
It's really hard to speculate. I think it'll share a similar architecture, at least, in terms of, like Thomas was saying, you'll have a launch, you'll have reusability, you'll have refueling in orbit, and your spaceship will double as your second stage. And those are... that's an architecture thing. I can't make a good estimation on size because I don't know what SpaceX's constraints are. I don't know what SpaceX has to work with, what they already had before that they weren't telling. Because obviously they have some things they won't tell people. But I think that's not their manufacturing tech, is what I was pointing out.
I think the biggest question that we're going to hopefully get answered next week is what class of vehicles they're going to be working on first. Are we going to... There's a reasonable assumption that, they've never made anything official, but there have been lots of hints that, yes, they're going to do a subscale vehicle. The diameter might be 9 meters just because that's how they can fit it in their current facilities. But I think getting maybe a 6-meter diameter vehicle isn't even out of the question. I think if you remember Falcon 9, the current diameter is, I think, 3 2/3 meters or something like that. So they could do even smaller. They could implement, or they could do both, obviously. I think that's the biggest question, is just how many steps are they going to want to take before they get to a full-scale vehicle?
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest question. I think if they go to a subscale rocket, you said, you were kind of assuming that they were still going to have just an upper stage that's not really a stage, but rather a spaceship.
Right.
And I think if they go to a subscale rocket, that might not necessarily be the case. I think they could just develop a new upper stage with a traditional fairing, or they could possibly do a fairing that's more similar to a payload bay, something that opens up, you can deploy satellites and then close it up again, which simplifies the whole fairing reuse thing.
Yeah.
But at that point, it does kind of become a spaceship, I guess. But I think a more conventional upper stage isn't out of the question, at least for the subscale vehicle.
Oh, I agree 100%. I was saying for the crew variant, the upper stage has to be the spaceship.
Oh yeah, they're not going to develop.
They might develop a subscale crew
take
variant.
2 stages and the crew capsule. I don't think they'll do that.
I think they might develop a subscale crew cabin.
They absolutely can do that.
For like 10 people.
And I think that would be a good way to make the first missions, because you think you're not going to send 100+ people on your first mission. You're going to send 10 of NASA's best astronauts. And you're going to take care of that and let them, risk their lives and try this new trailblazing technology. I think using the full scale for the first manned mission would be dumb.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah. Why would you ever go immediately to full scale? I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, so I'll just keep going. So I guess there's a question: are they? So this kind of ties into another topic now. So we're talking about a subscale vehicle that is going to provide. It's mostly just going to exist to be a pathfinder for transitioning from a vehicle the size of Falcon 9 to a full-scale ITS vehicle. So how are they going to fill the manifest is my question that I'm going to ask you guys. Is this going to be purely a commercial vehicle? Are they going to... Obviously, we're just talked about manned missions. They could do the first manned missions with a subscale vehicle, but are they going to have 2 subscale vehicles? We're talking about maybe let's have a 6-meter diameter and a 9-meter diameter. Are they going to keep that 6-meter vehicle purely for commercial use? So let's talk about because they got to fill the manifest in order to make these things,
feasible. Yeah. So I would, if my idea of the architecture for their medium small scale, whatever you want to call it, is you'll have a subscale booster. So like the current design is 77.5 meters tall, the booster, and 12 meters in diameter. And I'd reckon probably closer to 40 tall and like 8 or 9 diameter on your subscale.
They'll probably just kind of keep the ratio the same.
Yeah.
I don't.
And then with that, you'll have a commercial satellite launch vehicle, and that'll have just a second stage, and then, a fairing. And then you'll also have a crew variant, and you'll use the crew variant to go to a space hotel, because once you have a booster of this scale again, this is when we talk about a subscale booster, we're talking about something on the order of Blue Origin's New Glenn concept, right?
Right.
So SpaceX will have the capability to launch a space hotel if they want to. And I don't think that's impossible for them to do as a way to fund it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be... So, sorry, go ahead.
Let's talk about how that hotel idea. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think SpaceX has hinted absolutely nothing about developing that kind of thing on their own.
I'm aware. They might work with Bigelow.
That's what I was gonna say. Do any of Bigelow's products that they have talked about? Because I'm asking this as an honest question. I don't really know. Are any of those suited for that kind of hotel type thing?
I know that all of their expandable stuff, their whole intent was to make space hotels. They use the space station as a development hub for that capability.
Okay, so I know that the current fairings that SpaceX have been using, excuse me, are too small for those kind of for the ones that they're proposing. Because I believe they've said that all current launch vehicles. I think the Atlas V fairing is a little bit bigger than the SpaceX one, although SpaceX is working on a new one that might be bigger. I'm not sure about that, but they've said that current fairings are just not big enough to hold these kind of payloads. It's not so much a mass issue as much as it's just not big enough. I think a new class of vehicle of the subscale ITS nature would be perfect for that kind of payload. You can launch the whole thing in one launch. It'll definitely have the performance, and it'll have just the sheer size to hold the thing. So yeah, I think that's definitely a big partnership that I could see coming up. If New Glenn would a New Glenn fairing be big enough to hold one of the bigger Bigelow products?
I'm looking right now at the size of the Bigelow stuff, but even if they weren't going to go to their full size ones that they want right now, they could use the one that they launched the ISS, or like a similar size. And I've been in it. They have one at the mock-ups at NASA. It's big. There's room.
They're going to want to go up. The one they launched the ISS is a single module, and it doesn't have.
They would use more than one of those. Yes.
It doesn't have it doesn't have its own solar panels. It doesn't have its own, life support systems. It's purely
you'd have to
launch. The ISS system.
You'd have to launch more than one thing, maybe at the same time, maybe not. But
so I think if they went to maybe if they don't go to the biggest one that they had, but I think they could launch. And I'm not familiar with their lines of products. I can kind of look that up and get a better sense of it. Let's see.
Oh, that's interesting. Bigelow's headquarters is 2 miles from my work. That's a tangent.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that. I'm gonna go talk to them.
Just go drive over there right now. Ask them what we're talking about, and we'll get.
Hey,
get
do
Robert
you guys
Bigelow.
have any secret partnerships with SpaceX you want to tell teenagers about?
So here we go. So they are currently developing the B330, which looks like it's so imagine beam, but it has solar panels and propulsion, so it can kind of run on its own. And they're saying it can fit in a stretched fairing on an Atlas V. So that's reading like the current fairing is too small.
I'm gonna share something in Skype really quick here.
Okay.
With you all.
And then they're saying they have an Olympus station. That looks like it's a lot bigger, and they're showing that in an SLS fairing. If it can fit in an SLS fairing, I would assume then if SpaceX develops some sort of subscale ITS vehicle, that would probably fit in that size fairing as well.
Yeah, it would definitely fit in New Glenn too.
Yeah, and I think New Glenn's similar. Because New Glenn, Blue Origin just announced that they originally intended to have two sizes of fairings, and now they're just skipping the smaller one because no one's like asking to use it.
Yeah.
Let me get. I can find dimensions on that too, real quick.
I just dropped something in the chat on Skype for you guys, but it's a link to a SpaceX article on their website that says SpaceX and Bigelow Aerospace join forces to offer crewed missions to private space stations.
Yeah, I'm looking at that.
So I think that and it is with the 330 that you were talking about. So I think that it's quite possible that the next iteration on the ITS, like the midline model, will have capability to launch the 330 and I think that a partnership launching like perhaps 10 people at a time on a crewed capsule to that station with like 3 SpaceX crew and 7, I don't know, this is a dumb ratio, I shouldn't speculate about that, but like launching some crew and some customers to this station. But like you couldn't get more than like 10 people on a subscale. But
I'm looking at this article that you sent, and it mentions specifically that for Dragon and Falcon to carry crew, which I mean that makes sense. It does not mention anything about the launch vehicle for this station itself, which I think is more in line with what we could be talking about as far as ITS goes. If Bigelow is willing to use a SpaceX launch vehicle to get the satellite there in the first place, I think that would be I think that's a big manifest filler for ITS, because especially if they're going to have more than one.
Yeah.
And it definitely has the performance. They're talking about putting this thing in cislunar space. Then you definitely have the performance to get it there. And I think everything that I've heard about these Bigelow products is mass to orbit isn't the issue. They aren't necessarily heavy.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole these being
it's volume.
expandable. So it's just a matter of getting a fairing that's big enough.
Yep.
If that's the case, then you could also have this be a payload that's good for early flights of the ITS, a relatively easy flight profile. You're not, struggling to get it up where it needs to be.
You have the spare Delta V that you need to do a landing return and have a big margin of fuel for your RTLS. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's quite. I'm hesitant to say this, but I almost expect that they'll announce more on that partnership next weekend.
They might. If they're, I think it depends on how close they are, how close they think they are to launching one of these subscale things. If it's in, the early 2020s range for a launch of this thing, then yeah, I think you could have some sort of mention of what they plan on launching. If it's further down the line, though, if we're talking late 2020s before they launch one, then I think there'll be plenty of opportunities to talk about payloads between now and then. So I don't know about that, but I could see them doing that.
Like you were saying, it's a great way for them to fill the manifest. And then your other big consumer of a super heavy lift capacity vehicle is going to be the The Air Force and telecommunications companies. That's always what it has been. That's always what it will be until things are vastly cheaper. Because basically, telecommunications, the bigger you can make your satellite, the more customers you can serve more cheaply. So they're going to want bigger satellites. They're going to want to make them as big as they possibly can. I don't know if you've seen, but they basically fill the entire fairing on Falcon 9s. If you're launching this booster will take a little while. Like you're saying, early missions, the Bigelow stuff would be really nice because it's been in development for a long time. So the booster can be tailored to that. But for communications and Air Force satellites, you're going to have the development of a new satellite bus by Boeing or someone for that, and then you'll modify that satellite bus, and that'll take a little while. But once you have that, you have a strong commercial base. So
I think it's important to remember that the market adjusting for new capabilities as far as launch vehicles goes is going to take a while. You can't expect SpaceX to roll out a new rocket and then
immediately
within the year have
20 launches a day. Yeah,
brand new satellite buses.
It's going to take them a long time to develop things because it's still the aerospace industry. It's a very conservative industry, and not just in the fact that we physically go slow, but people are hesitant to try new technologies.
Falcon Heavy is always 6 months away.
Right.
Yep.
I think so. I've kind of got Google open on the side here, and as far as launching habitats for Bigelow, it appears that there is already a partnership between Bigelow and ULA.
I saw that.
This is saying
For the Lunar Depot, you mean?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is it for the Lunar Depot? That's like on their website?
The B330, which is the habitat we're talking about, with the initial launch to orbit in 2020 on an Atlas V. I'm looking. We are exploring options of the location of the initial B330, including discussion with NASA on the possibility of attaching it to the ISS. So this could be another low Earth orbit thing, which would make sense. If you're launching it for the first time, you might not want to go straight to cislunar. You might stick in LEO for the first time and then maybe send the second one a little farther out.
Mm-hmm. I think that from reading about Bigelow a little bit, they're a company that has problems, specifically with over-promising and under-delivering.
You're talking about SpaceX or?
No, with Bigelow. From reading,
well, they're a bit of a smaller company.
Yeah, they are.
I think
So yeah, I do know that if their tests all go successfully on their current module on the station, they're gonna get major clearance for doing the next development step. And so I think that they're probably all ready to do all of that, and they just need the clearance. Because they've been kind of stalling since they launched that.
I'm not sure. I can't testify for the amount of testing that they're still doing on ISS. So it's very possible that they want to finish that mission before they launch the next one.
Right. That's
especially if they're going to be docking it to the ISS, because in which case you probably need the docking port, to be honest. So
it's currently docked, isn't it?
I'm sorry, say that again?
It is currently docked, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So before they want to launch their newest version, they're going to want to bring that. I don't know if they're planning on bringing it back or just ejecting it. I don't know.
I think
they're going to eject it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just burning up.
So anyway.
The nice thing about the station is it's in low enough orbit that if you eject something from it, it's in a low enough orbit that it'll burn up in a few months.
Yeah. I actually was surprised to learn. I was doing some research for something completely unrelated to any of this, and I found that the ISS is actually like lower than most low Earth orbit satellites are.
Yes.
So, yeah, just that.
Not just that, but it's also significantly larger and more draggy.
More draggy? Is that a technical term there, buddy?
Yeah, definitely. You're the other aerospace major. You should know that. Yeah, it has a lot of drag. It has giant solar panels.
Yeah, absolutely.
It needs to be boosted a lot, and people don't know that.
There's another question. I know that the current reboosts and whatnot for the ISS are generally done with Soyuz engines. Do we know if Dragon engines have contributed to that at all?
I have no idea.
I'm gonna look that up.
I don't think so, but
I think this is kind of a tangent that we're getting off on now.
That is also true.
Yeah.
I would imagine at least Dragon 2 could help boost it. I mean, it's probably got enough fuel for it.
No, it can't.
It can't?
No, there's no propulsion anymore.
Oh, yeah. Whoops.
Well, yeah. Well, it's going to have the Super Dracos, but it's Crew Dragons. But
well, I guess they have to for Launch Escape, but that's it.
Yeah, I'm looking. I mean, someone asked this on Stack Exchange, and it's looking like the general. Actually, this is saying the Super Draco is too powerful because, well, I mean, you could throttle it. I don't know. It's another question. It's looking like they're not really planning on doing that. They're saying it also depends on where it docks. If it's docking more in line with the center mass, that makes things a lot easier. Anyway, this is completely irrelevant to anything we're supposed to be talking about.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Also, look at the chat. Is Aspera there still?
Yes, I am. I just don't know what to talk about. I'm not qualified to be talking about this.
Neither are we. We're just very good at pretending.
But here's a question for everyone. With the subscale ITS, like, do you guys think there's going to be a fairing, or do you think, because, like, personally, I think they're probably going to go with, like, a cargo bay instead of a fairing. But
I think a cargo bay would be the smarter option, but I really have no idea whether they're going to go straight to that or if they're going to want to build a fairing first. I don't know.
I kind of am leaning towards the side that they'll build a disposable second stage and have a similar architecture to the Falcon 9 at first, and then they'll develop a cargo launch vehicle that functions as a second stage but also returns.
A reasonable second stage? Yeah, I can see that.
So that's what I would say.
Speaking of reusable upper stages, this ties in directly with ITS development. I know there's been a lot of talk about, and I know Elon at one point did hint that there might be a reusable second stage attempt on Falcon Heavy's demo flight. We have not heard anything about that since.
When did he do that? Was that back in like the 2012 days, or?
No, that was a year or two ago. It wasn't that long.
Because I'll remind you, black interstages were a thing.
Yeah, I think that was well beyond that.
Yeah. No, if that's really cool if he does attempt that. I don't think that they're anywhere near trying that. They haven't talked about it at all. That may be another thing that they announce.
Well, so the reason I brought it up
here... Isn't there going to be another Falcon Heavy launch a few months from now?
There is a second customer. It's the Taiwanese government.
So originally the first flight was going to be a demo flight with some payload that is going to be just dumb.
I heard a good theory. I think it came from Carl Sagan that that's actually going to be the SpaceX satellite bus test.
People were saying that, and I think people were mostly saying it just because
they have no idea what it is.
That it was just an idea that was thrown out, and I think people were trying to suggest that because they're like, oh, if it fails, then they don't lose a customer. Yeah, but they still lose a really expensive satellite that they built, and they don't want to do that. So I think the first payload is going to really be something that's completely not valuable, even slightly. I think it's going to be Yeah, I think what if the first flight of Dragon had a wheel of cheese inside or something?
They'll probably just put more cheese on the fairing.
Yeah, they'll just put more weight in cheese
Look,
on board.
the moon isn't made of American cheese yet.
They'll launch a Model 3.
Oh, yet.
I think they should launch a Tesla. I think that would be awesome.
The new when Elon Musk goes to SpaceX and he accidentally tells them to push the new software update at Tesla, and suddenly your cars all drive to space.
All the GPS systems just take you to Cape Canaveral.
On to Pad 39.
Historic Launch Complex 39 is what you meant to say, Jake.
Pad 39A?
Throwback. Yeah. Anyway, so the reason I brought that up is, for as far as upper stage reuse goes, that could be a huge part of ITS, especially because they're kind of go into full reusability anyway. The reason I mentioned the Falcon Heavy flight is that people were saying if you take a Raptor engine, probably scaled down, and replace the Merlin vacuum engine that's on the upper stage, it makes upper stage reuse a lot more feasible because the efficiency goes ways up.
That's true.
Well, the Air Force...
that would also be a great opportunity to test out a Raptor in flight if they just stuck it on an upper stage as opposed to waiting to launch an ITS vehicle.
Right. Well, what was like a year ago or something? Didn't the Air Force come out with something that said like they were looking into that for like a potential
I think the
contract?
Air Force like to just it also offers a performance upgrade. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that was talked about.
I think that's an interesting idea. I hadn't considered that, but I think that the Falcon 9's architecture is totally possible to convert the second stage to a Raptor engine. I think they'd need to redesign the entire thing, and there would probably be some failures, and it would take a very long time. But it's possible, and it would make it easier. But you still have the problem of that's a vacuum engine. How do you do a propulsive landing with it?
That is a decent point. I think. Well, so there's also been talk of so if you imagine, first of all, you have to remember this engine would probably be scaled down. You're not going to put a full scale Raptor. You would rip the spacecraft to shreds. But if you had this subscale Raptor engine to increase efficiency, it is still only going to be used for orbital insertion and whatnot, and probably deorbiting. I don't think that would be the propulsive system for the landing. There's been a lot of talk about using Draco or Super Draco engines that are also installed as a lander instead.
That's quite possible. You could do that.
So no matter what, the upper stage is going to have a vacuum engine no matter what. So going for a propulsive landing, I think it's pretty safe to say that there will have two separate engines, one for flying in space and one for a propulsive landing.
So it has to survive re-entry heat, which is something that the Falcon 9 sort of has to deal with, but not as much at all.
Not nearly as much, yes.
And that means that one of the sides has to be heat hardened. Now, it's potentially easier to do that on the engine side, which is already the heavier side. But if you want to land, you don't want to land on your engine bell. So I think that they might have it land with the S2 engine upwards, the nose of of S2 down, and then heat shielding on the front and landing legs that fold out from the side.
I completely agree. I think if you had... I don't even know if you need landing legs at that point. So if you're going to go pretty much on nose-down re-entry, first of all, that makes heat shielding a lot better. You can just stick a heat shield on top of the stage.
You put grid fins at the back, move your center of pressure to the back.
I think if you have a heat shield on the front and you have, Super Dracos that are facing up during launch,
right?
They'll be used for the landing. I think it'd also probably be capable of just doing a soft landing without needing landing legs.
I'm skeptical of that because
it would tip over still because it wouldn't be perfectly flat.
That's true.
It would still be rounded, so it wouldn't be able to stand.
I would definitely put landing legs, also just because that vehicle was not designed with that intent, and there wouldn't be hardening in that architecture. That's like if you tried to put your car on its nose, it wouldn't work.
I'm just trying to think of ways. I mean, the biggest part of making upper stage reuse a thing is not adding so much weight that you're losing performance.
Well, you don't necessarily need as big landing legs as Falcon 9.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, it's a much smaller stage. You could use something far lighter.
And here's another way that you can kind of tie in ITS development with this upper stage reuse. Not only the Raptor engine, but if you look at the ITS concept video that he used, the landing legs are a lot different than what we see on Falcon 9. They're kind of in line with the fuselage and fold out later. If they were able to implement that kind of landing leg into the upper stage for reuse, that would just make that much simpler.
Yeah.
Just as opposed to the landing legs the style of Falcon has right now.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot that can be done to increase your reusability factor on the upper stage. I think it's going to come down to which sacrifices SpaceX is willing to make, and what they're not. And it could come down to most of the stage gets ruined on landing, and you just save like the engine maybe. Like you could use your entire tank as a crumple zone if you want.
I don't think that's a route that SpaceX would like to take. I mean, now you're getting close into like ULA smart reuse, where you're only trying to save the most important parts of the rocket. The whole point of recovery for SpaceX isn't just to save money; it's to be able to rapidly reuse and refly those stages.
Right.
And if you're using something like a crumple zone, you have to rebuild the whole stage before you fly it again.
Right.
So I think that kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, I mean, like you can keep your engine intact and have it like quickly changeable, and because the tanks are easier to make than the engines. But I see your point.
Crap, what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say that you're talking about adding weight. Depending on how efficient the Raptor ends up being, and of course, again, I have to scale it down for this sort of application, but the adding weight and sacrificing performance, depending on how efficient that rocket is, the more efficient you make the engine, the more room you have to add weight to make it reusable.
Yeah, absolutely. So if that's what I was saying. Like you could add. The current design is not conducive to adding landing legs because they would increase the weight a lot. If you were to switch to a Raptor-based system, you would have the tolerance you need to add landing legs. I think. Like I haven't done the math. We could try the math.
I think it's safe to say that. I mean,
they're like 40% more efficient, right?
I mean, so we know that upper stage reuse with just the Merlin vacuum engine right now is feasible for lighter payloads. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that, yeah, I think Raptor is about 40% more efficient. I think that number's about right. That changing out for a Raptor engine would give you enough room to work with as far as adding landing legs, adding Super Dracos, etc.
Yeah, no, I agree.
When it comes to like Raptor. Like, you know, they're testing the subscale Raptor in McGregor.
Yep.
But I'm honestly kind of leaning towards, like, the one that we're seeing now. I think that's kind of the full scale, like, right now. Like, they'll still make the more powerful one, but they're just going to slowly build up to it, kind of like they did with Merlin. So what do you guys think about that?
I think you could do that. I think you could see that the one they're testing now, and especially the fact that they're testing one of that scale, if it's testing successfully, why not just use that engine? Why change it before you use it? So, yeah, I think that subscale Raptor engines like the one they're testing now will be in use. And I think that seeing a more incremental increase in thrust and efficiency and whatnot, like they did with Merlin, would be totally realistic, and that would make a lot of sense for them.
Right. The problem with Raptor, the reason we're having trouble getting a full scale one, is because its chamber pressure is the highest by a factor of 4 out of any rocket. And
yeah, I mean, like, even now, like, they're pushing the limits of what it can really handle.
Right. I am talking right now on the stream for the chat. They're curious as to who is who.
If we want to reintroduce ourselves, if you're just joining us, that was SNR, aka Jake. I'm Thomas. I'm Max Aerosmith.
Keep going, guys.
I'm SpaceX fan.
And I'm Paraspora at Astra.
Yeah.
My allergies are acting really stupid right now, so I'm sorry.
I'm good.
You're fine.
I think if you're just joining us, welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just put a comment in the stream too.
There you go. So what else about ITS do you want us to talk about, SNM?
The landing, like, I was thinking, like, because you know how in the animation it was landing in the launch mount?
Yeah.
You know, no legs or anything, but, so, I kind of thought that, yeah, they're going to keep that, but at least at first, maybe just with the smaller one in general, I don't think they're going to land, like, you know, on the launch pad. Like, I think they're going to land, like, in a launch mount, kind of like the space shuttle crawler, but I think it's going to be, like, away from the pad, kind of like on the landing, like landing zone 1, let's say. Like, it would be placed out there, like, rolled out there, the booster lands in it.
Launch pad, you're saying?
Yeah, and then just rolls right up to it. Because I don't think they should land it literally at the launch pad in case it fails.
You know, I've never thought of that, but that's a really good idea, especially for just at least the first couple.
Yeah.
You don't want to destroy your launch pad if something goes wrong. I mean, we've seen the consequences of destroying a launch pad with Ammo 6, so I think that's a great idea.
Let's be honest, Zuckerberg.
If you had, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, let's be honest, that was Zuckerberg's fault.
Oh yeah.
I think if they had basically a TEL, but for ITS, and you put that on the middle of landing zone 1 and land it there, I think that would probably be a smart way to do that. And they're going to end up having a TEL for this, at least for the subscale rocket anyway. So, if they wanted to try that. I've seen some people trying to figure out whether they should just stick landing legs on it and land it Falcon style. And I think a big technology that they have to get down in order to make ITS work is landing on the launch pad. So I think sticking landing legs on it and landing it like Falcon does right now is just not. It's just. I think it's more worth it to at least try the landing in a launch cradle. And if it turns out that's not going to work, then they have to just reevaluate how they're going to get this system off the ground.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm going to be honest, like, I was, like, skeptical about, you know, landing in the launch mount with the accuracy, but, I mean, we've seen time and time again them getting the accuracy, at least with Falcon 9, down to meters. I mean, what was it,
Yep.
Formosat? I think it was Formosat 5, it landed, what, like 2 feet from the center of the drone ship or something?
Elon
Like,
tweeted
it was
some stats.
dead
They said
center.
0.7 meters from target and that was for performance at.
Yeah.
And I think that's been about the range for pretty much all of the recent landings. So I think they are really being able to fine tune that. And I think the technology that they have now is very accurate as far as landing. Now, you have to remember when you scale that up to even a subscale ITS, your vehicle is going to respond slower. You're going to have more forces at play. You're going to be landing with more than one engine burning. So all of that ties into you're going to have to really fine tune that for a little bit before you get that kind of range with ITS.
Oh yeah, but also the thing I think a lot of people like don't understand is that Falcon 9, it's doing a suicide burn. It can't hover. The ITS, it's going to be able to hover to actually get that within like a couple inches accuracy.
And not just hover. You have a lot when you're landing in a launch clamp. You have a lot more accuracy required in several ways. Not only do you have to land on a spot, you have to land at a certain speed, and you have to land in the correct roll profile.
Yeah, I thought of that too. Like, I was thinking that, the arms that would probably come up and grab it or however it would work. I was thinking that maybe they could just have it built all the way, like, around the booster, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like, they wouldn't have to worry about it as much.
Or they could have those rotary.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other mechanical thing, but it's on the ground, so I assume they can do it.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
I'd also like to point out that when Elon was tweeting about the range on Formosat, he also I don't know if he mentioned it or if someone else brought it up, but the expected tolerance for landing for a launch mount is expected to be about 2 meters. So theoretically, if they tried to land the Formosat booster on a launch mount, they would have had it. So that's worth noting that they do have a little bit of room to work with. Launch mounts are pretty, when the launch, if you see a launch and the launch clamps move away, there's a good bit of room there to work with. So
it makes me worried about what mechanism they're grabbing the rocket by. But
I think it's just going to be, descending onto the launch mount, and obviously, like SNN said, you do not want to land on your engine bells. But I think we have basically, you said it can hover. If they can just hover it, a couple inches off the pad, and the clamps come in and grab it, I think that would be how that mechanism works.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi, Cosmologic. I butchered your name, I'm sorry.
Oh, hello.
Does anyone have any other stuff or any other predictions not related to ITS that they have for the event?
So I think IAC is going to be focused on ITS for the most part. I don't think you'll hear a lot about Falcon Heavy or Dragon 2. Although, unless they're going to mention anything about possibly... Well, so, okay, this is kind of going... Well, not really. It directly ties into ITS. I think there's been talk about some sort of vehicle... Basically, imagine Dragon 2, but it's in the style of ITS with landing legs on the side and center-mounted engines. If any type of vehicle like that exists on the scale of closer to Dragon than ITS, and this could also be a subscale vehicle, which they'll probably talk about, that we'll probably hear about. And if there's any possibility that they're going to use some sort of scaled-down ITS spaceship, but not launch it on an ITS booster, if they're scaling it down to the point where they can launch on a Falcon 9 or a Falcon Heavy, if that's a thing, then we'll probably hear about that next week.
Yeah. I agree.
I think that don't expect to hear a lot about Dragon 2 or Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy unless it directly ties into ITS.
I think they may try to do that with Falcon 9 Stage 2 reusability. If they do have a payload variant that uses a second stage.
Should we answer this question in the chat from Captain Ace?
How ITS benefit future missions? So, the most obvious answer is just this is going to be the most high-performing rocket ever built. This will outperform Saturn V by a lot. So hold on. So, subscale ITS. What's the margin between a full-scale ITS and Saturn V?
I got that right here. One sec. So,
because a scaled-down rocket might be more comparable to ITS.
I actually do have this pulled up. One sec.
I think they said if they went with the, 9-meter vehicle, then it's like a third? No, it's like half the payload or something. So.
I'm trying to look up numbers.
Yeah.
There we go. So it looks like the payload mass to low Earth orbit for Saturn V is about 140 metric tons. And don't quote me on this because this is coming directly from Wikipedia. But Saturn V payload orbit is about 140 tons, which is still more than any of the SLS variants. The ITS launch vehicle reusable, and this is full scale, would be about 300. Yeah. So if you're talking about a subscale rocket with about half the mass, then that's very comparable to Saturn V.
Yeah, the MCT that was cited last year, the concept vehicle, which is what I'm going to refer to it as, it said that it could do a delivery of 100 metric tons to the surface of Mars.
Right. Saturn V never went to Mars, so it's a tough comparison.
Yeah.
Do we have a number of SLS mass to Mars? Well, SLS isn't going to go directly to Mars, though, so they wouldn't.
You can think of it this way. In terms of launch mass, ITS full scale is 10,500 metric tons versus the Saturn V's 3,040.
So I think, to answer your question, so the biggest upside is just simply this is going to outperform any rocket on the market. Even if you have a ITS that is that's 150 to the low Earth orbit, that outclasses the biggest SLS variant by 20 metric tons to orbit.
Right, which outclasses New Glenn and everything.
Well, yeah. So you have to remember. So when you're comparing it to things like New Glenn is on this at least closer to Falcon Heavy than ITS as far as timeline goes. Right. ITS, you have to remember, is not launching this decade.
Right.
New Glenn, however, might theoretically kind of sort of ish.
No, it won't. But that's another.
We'll see about that.
That's another debate.
if they get lucky.
So
no, it's if they fire Bezos.
But as far as class, New Glenn is in the same class as Falcon Heavy, and SLS. The later SLS originally might theoretically be in the same class, but SLS will pretty much outclass those two rockets once it gets to later iterations. And then SLS will then become the highest performing vehicle until ITS is a thing.
We're back. Sorry.
Jake, what the fuck happened?
My internet's shit still.
Hey, I think we're back.
Yes. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Blame SNR.
Yep. My fault. Well, no, it's my dad's fault, but whatever.
Blame not having SpaceX internet.
Yep.
We still have a better internet connection than the drone ship.
Well, to be fair, I also have less acoustic interference.
That is, bro. Unless you have a Falcon 9 landing in your backyard, then yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, I don't.
That's unfortunate.
That's unfortunate. I wish I had.
They know too much information. The government shut it down. Damn right. That's the excuse we're using.
Why are the cops breaking my door down?
Bullshit, I can't hear it.
Anyway, so what were we talking? Got rudely interrupted. SNN, we were talking about SLS and outclassing ITS and whatnot, and you were in the middle of a sentence. Cut you off.
Yeah, it's I was saying that I think the mini like subscale ITS is going to be more comparable to New Glenn than Falcon Heavy, just because like just the sheer size of it is. I think because New Glenn is 7 meters, isn't it? I think
in diameter, yes.
Yeah, then ITS could be anywhere from 6 to 9, who knows? But I think it'll be more of a competitor, and just in terms of payload too, it might be closer to New Glenn. I'm not really sure about that, but I think they honestly.
You were mentioning that you think a subscale ITS is supposed to have half the mass of the full scale one. Do you have a source for that, or is that just a guess?
That's a guess.
I thought I saw that on Reddit. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's feasible.
Yeah. Thought someone on SpaceX Reddit page said that, like, quick calculation, I think it was. I don't know.
I think it's worth noting that Falcon Heavy only outclasses New Glenn in expendable mode.
Yeah.
In reusable mode, New Glenn actually has more mass to orbit than Falcon Heavy. Excuse me. So, if ITS developing, or SpaceX developing an ITS that is subscale and is of similar class to New Glenn but can outperform it, that's very valuable for SpaceX because that just adds more competition to that market.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like, they did downscale, like, ITS just because it'll be easier for one, and also, like, to compete with New Glenn and New Armstrong, wherever the new one is going to be after that. But, like, it's going to be, like, a New Glenn killer, and it's going to help SpaceX, like, get more of the market that Blue Origin might take away from them.
Yeah, I think you mentioned New Armstrong, and now that I think about it, I think maybe a subscale ITS would be a more direct competitor to a New Armstrong type rocket.
That could be true too. Do we have any numbers on what that might even be? Have they even released anything? Yeah, I don't know.
Armstrong,
if they ever...
we have little to no information. Blue Origin hasn't released much about that. Guy asking about payload to orbit for New Glenn. I can look that up real quick. Hold on. According to all-knowing Wikipedia, yeah, it's saying 45 kilos to low Earth orbit. I believe that is in reusable mode because from what I understand, there's no plans on flying New Glenn expendable. So yes, I would think it's safe to assume that a number is for reusable mode.
This is kind of funny. They've mentioned the name New Armstrong literally once, and it wasn't even from Bezos.
Was it from someone at?
It was from an employee.
Okay, well, so I mean, it goes directly with their naming convention. I think if they're gonna make a rocket after New Glenn, and that's at least, especially one that's specifically designed to go to the moon, which we know Blue Origin is interested in. I think that's probably what they would name. I can find a more reliable source for that number. 1 sec, Alpha. But actually, speaking of the moon, this ties into ITS again. Do you think ITS missions to the moon is a thing that we might see in our future?
It's quite possible.
Definitely.
As a tech demonstration, sure.
Plus, I think if SpaceX ever wanted to, they could open that up to tourism, I guess, as not even just like landing, but like even a flight around it and coming back, kind of like what the Dragon 2 is going to do in a couple of years.
I think they're still doing that. I think they're still targeting end of next year for that.
It was, was it Oh yeah, end of 2018, not 2019, right?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, for the lunar flyby mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that is still currently. Actually, hold on. Before I say that, I
Well, I'm
think
pretty sure they're saying end of 2018, but everyone knows it's going to be 2019. So
the Reddit manifest says 2019. I don't
okay,
know if they have a source for that. I think so. I think probably
common
officially
sense.
it's still targeting 2018, but I think seeing that slip to 2019 would definitely not be out of the question.
Yeah. I'm looking through Elon's like Twitter because I thought he said something about the moon recently.
Who did?
Maybe I'm just crazy. Elon, I'm looking to his Twitter.
Okay.
Good. I might have
Probably
just
for
imagined
the
that.
people asking about more reliable sources, I'm looking at an article from Ars Technica about when New Glenn was released, and they're citing those numbers as well. So I think um, that might have been from the official announcer from Blue Origin about the rocket that those numbers are coming from. But anyway, so yeah, you have Dragon 2 doing a lunar flyby. For ITS, you'd be more looking at a landing, probably. I guess not.
Well, would it have enough fuel though to? Because you can't really get the fuel on the moon, can you? I don't think the moon has.
For a landing, you're right. Yeah,
Minerals.
they don't, well, I mean, unless you were to change the fuel for some reason.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right. So yeah, that's true. I think, but so why would you use ITS and not just use Dragon 2 and a Falcon Heavy?
I would say because ITS it's bigger, you can get more people. Plus, I mean, it'd be a lot more comfortable, probably.
I mean, how
Plus,
many people do you expect to get on these flights? I mean, the one that's happening in 2018 or 2019, that's only 2 people, and there are not a lot of people that have the money to pay for this kind of thing.
that is true.
So I'm not sure that market is as big. I mean, yes, could it happen? And obviously, as the price for rockets go down, more people can afford it. But I think that's not going to at least be a primary uh, manifester for ITS. I mean, they're already banking on people paying to go to Mars, so.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's another thing for my kind of like prediction thing. But where do you guys think the new ITS is going to launch? Do you think it's going to be Boca Chica, or do you think it's going to be 39A or somewhere else somehow?
I think first launches will probably be from 39A.
Yeah.
39A?
I don't think you see Boca Chica launching until they legitimately need 2 pads just to keep up cadence that they want.
Yeah.
I think launching from 39A would probably be the norm until you get to the point where it's rapid launches like Elon wants.
Well, okay, but that brings up another question: is will 39A be able to handle both architectures of vehicle? Will it be able to take the Falcon classes?
That's a good point because
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, but it said yeah, ITS is going to use different fuel, so they would have to change those systems to accommodate both of them.
Right. You can't launch both of those from the same pad because they have vastly different architectures, and both fuel and all the ground equipment basically needs to be swapped. And you have to have a different physical pad, like a different set of launch clamps and a different strong back.
Well, so that's my point, though. The TEL is rolled up and back to the pad whenever it needs. So the only thing different about the pad is, yeah, you need to run extra fuel lines so they have one set for the ITS fuel and one for the Falcon fuel. But the TELs would be different for the rockets. And as long as you had that, I think launching both vehicles from the same pad would not be ridiculous. I mean, you're gonna have a set of launch clamps for ITS on the TEL, and you'll have a TEL for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy.
I very much doubt that they'll both launch from the same pad. they may purchase 39B and use it.
You're gonna have to convince NASA to cancel SLS before they do that.
Well,
NASA might cancel SLS anyway. That's like not.
I hope they cancel it.
I'm not gonna hope that the space program goes bad, but it seems quite possible to me.
Isn't like SLS getting brought to the launch pad on like a shuttle crawler? Like there's no like TEL on it or anything? Yeah. So technically, wouldn't they be able to just like roll an ITS up, like if they had the fuel lines and everything in place, like if the ITS was on like a shuttle crawler too, like couldn't they technically just roll it up there too?
That's the same thing with 39A. Really well, if you just had two different CELs, I mean that's the same thing.
I think that they could definitely do that. I think it's actually probably
my last. Sorry.
It's probably easier to share a pad with the SLS and the ITS than it is with the Falcon 9, because the Falcon 9 has ground equipment that's much harder to move around.
Why do you say that?
Like, if you want to bring in an SLS, right, most of its ground equipment is on that crawler with it. If you just have a different crawler for the ITS, then you're basically swapping out all of your ground equipment at the same time.
Except isn't most of Falcon's ground equipment on the TEL?
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure it is, which is why. I mean, if that's not the case, then I understand your point. But I think a TEL is essentially a crawler, it's a SpaceX name for it. And I think that the majority of the fuel lines and whatnot, I mean, we know the fuel lines go through the strong back because that's how it connects. There are no tethers between Falcon 9 and the launch tower of 39A.
Yeah.
So.
Here's one thing, too. Isn't the water, like, suppression system part of the ground? It's not part of the TEL, right? I don't think it is.
That is correct. But I don't think that. I think the water suppression system doesn't really need to be adapted a whole lot for different launch vehicles. So.
Oh, that is another question, though, because you're running many engines at many times the pressure, like more than they've ever seen before, at those pads. Will they need a bigger water system?
Well, so they would upgrade 39A to be able to handle an ITS. And then what you would have after that is if they need to launch a Falcon from that pad. Now, keep in mind, Launch Complex 40 will be up and running by this point. So theoretically, they could just move all Falcon operations to 40. But if they need to be launching both of them from 39A, they can. I think having an overly or an overperforming water suppression system isn't a bad thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't see that as a huge issue.
This will probably be my last point from here, but we got the animation for the ITS and everything last year. Do you guys think we're gonna get like a whole new animation this year that might like show it doing a full mission, let's say in the Earth orbit, and then like landing back on Earth? Because I know the one from last year, like it ended when it landed on Mars. It didn't show it refueling and then how it's going to land back on Earth or anything. Like it didn't show any of that. So do you guys think we're actually going to get like
I'd be very
something?
Surprised. I'd be very surprised if it showed anything about Mars this time.
Yeah.
Because
I think that I don't think we'll get a whole new awesome animation, especially because this is mostly going to be just minor changes to an architecture they've already introduced. So unless they want to unveil something that's radically different, I don't think you'll get those kind. You'll probably get some images and whatnot and some CAD drawings, but other than that, I wouldn't expect something too fancy.
The real question is, will their website be updated for once?
Probably.
Because it wasn't last year.
I'd hope so.
Any final thoughts?
I guess you can take that as a no.
I mean, I think we pretty much covered everything.
Yeah, I agree. I think we did a pretty good job.
This last chance for chat. Any questions for us? And I think we covered subscale vehicle possibilities. We talked about payloads. We talked about reusability, launch mounts. We talked about Mars, and we talked about the moon. Talked about Raptor.
So just one more thing here. It doesn't have anything to do with the ITS, but rest in peace, Cassini.
Yes.
Thank you, Cassini.
Peace out. All right, cool. So I think we should probably wrap it up here then. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
The nerds did run out of things to talk about.
Don't worry, there'll be plenty more this time next week.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah. With that, I guess I should say thanks for coming. I am not technically the host, so.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and also thanks for hosting at Space and Robots.
No problem.
Thanks for having me, SNN.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. That was fun.
No problem, guys. But because I wanted to do another one after the announcement, obviously. So don't know what day, obviously, but would you guys be up for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. Thank you all for coming out, and hopefully we get to talk about some more, especially afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.